Hi, and welcome to Cool Jobs. I'm Caden Amoroso, your host of the show that aims to answer the question that every kid is asked at Thanksgiving by their relatives, which is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not knowing the answer myself, I've decided to set out on an interviewing adventure where I would find individuals who have achieved the dream of working fun and rewarding careers and ask them how they found these jobs. What are some of the challenges these jobs present? And what keeps them motivated and driven to continue their work. All of this so that other kids and teens out there can learn with me and find the answer to the same question that I struggle with, which is, what do we want to be when we grow up? Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Marshal Adair, a trailblazer in the gaming industry since 2009. Starting as a producer, Mr. Adair has contributed to numerous gaming projects across multiple studios. Now, as the Senior Vice President and Executive Producer at Everi, a leader in the gambling industry, Mr. Adair combines creativity and strategy to drive innovation. In this episode, we'll dive into Mr. Adair's fascinating career journey, explore the dynamics of corporate leadership, and uncover what it takes to succeed in the gambling and gaming worlds. Enjoy! In this interview, is it okay if we talk about both the programming side and a little bit of the management side too? Because I know Zoe mentioned that, and I did a little bit of research, and that you were a program for different game studios, and now you work with Everi.
Yeah, my career has been really I think just very classic
Mm-hmm.
in terms of a game developer or anybody that goes into games thinking that they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna start game development and become a game maker out the gate. And a lot of people have a lot of great ideas, but it's a huge learning curve and always changing what it is you need to learn to be on that curve. And I started 20 years ago as an animation specialist, sort of bridging between my history, my family's history in film, and where it connects with games. And that's how I got my start and was a producer at a studio that uh, did third-party work for other game studios, big game studios, and we would do third-party work for it. And then we were on the very forefront of making apps for individuals who knew that there was a gold mine out there, but certainly long before the app market became as big as it was. And then I transformed into a social gaming guru, as it were, and started making all the games on Facebook that everyone loved and hated there for a while. And then it transformed into this huge industry on mobile doing the very same thing. And then the two collided, became one industry, and that's where I found myself for a good 10 years. And then after having um, co-run, co-owned, kind of started a studio from scratch and got a lot of business
Oh wow.
intelligence along with doing that and running it with somebody that I've been working with for 20 years, and he still works with me today. And we've kind of got a lot of understanding around what it means to be a professional, be a game maker, and then also be a part of an industry that's changing and growing and so on. And once we got a lot of that business sense, we both transformed into a completely different version of gaming, which is the gambling industry, and we call it
Mm,
gambling. And for the last 10 years, have been a
mm.
part of a big corporate company named Everi, doing the same sort of things, but for a very particular industry, which is, of course, gaming, gambling industry for gaming. It's quite different, but the same in process and the same in scope and so on. But yeah.
Wow. Is it okay if it sounds so interesting. Is it okay if we dive into did you go to college for programming? Like, what was your major in college?
Uh, it took me about as long as it takes a doctor to get through college. And where I started was, yeah, I started with the intention to do computer science, thinking that would be the easiest connection into the whole world of games and doing the hobbies that I like and so on. But frankly, I couldn't muster the mathematics to get as far as I wanted in there. And I had to transfer to another passion of mine, which is like reading, writing, and storytelling, which is a huge
Mm.
part of game making overall and game design and design of any kind, even static design and so on. And so I got degrees in English. I have an English degree around rhetoric and writing, which,
Wow.
I do every day. Everybody does reading and
Right.
rhetoric and
That's so
writing every
true. I
day.
guess
So
that's
I
such
use
like
my
a
degree every day in my email talking about
That's perfect. And then out of college, um, where did you start out of college? Where on your path? What was
My
your next
path was
step?
strange. I got out of college and didn't jump directly into game making. I was basically willing to do anything, as most people are right out of college. And so I taught a little bit. I was a professor for a college for a couple of semesters, for a semester, and then I did some teleprompting and did some stuff, a live event producing and so on. And then similar to how our connection was, someone that my parents knew from having shared a building with them started a game studio, and I went and interned there while I was working and doing odd jobs trying to make money for a while. And one of those internship jobs, as they were projects at a place called Critical Mass Interactive, um, turned into a paying gig. And we started making
Whoa.
money on there. And I got a cut of that. And I got the taste. Oh, you can make money making games and making software. And then I went all in and started spending my 100% of my career time doing that.
And so did you did you know programming going into that job, or did you learn through like trial and error and like shadowing and
No, the truth
apprenticeships
is,
or
I don't know any programming at all really anymore. I started out doing that and understanding it, and you need to understand how software development works and what code is doing to have fundamental understanding of how to do what I'm doing now, which is lead large teams that include very amazing programmers and technologists and scientists. But my ability to program and to I mean, it is rudimentary at best, not even. And it's enough to understand what's happening so that you can communicate with all of the different disciplines and so on. And so I didn't make it very far. Prototypes at best, especially when we began to proof of concept something. And I still do that as a pastime, as I
Mm.
prototype things that come to my mind using my pseudocode language. And there's a lot of tools now. I mean, you don't even need to know code to prototype something these days, which is fantastic because I
Oh
think
wow.
a lot of people have great ideas that, would take a decade to learn everything they would
Hmm.
want to do, but given a tool set like an engine of some kind. And so I use those to get my ideas out of my mind. It's like scratch paper that you
Mm.
take a quick sketch on and
Yeah, that's so cool how like it's just like a vessel to get your ideas on into concept.
yep.
And
I use that all the time, both in my professional life with my
mm,
teams, and then also for time eternal, just getting ideas out of my mind that I want to make somehow or do. And yeah, that's how I use the programming that I
mm,
know, and then I use the rest of
mm.
it to pretend like I know what I'm saying and talk to other people about it. Yeah.
How did you get your start at Everi? I know you mentioned that you started a studio with your friend.
Yeah, we ran a studio for 5 or 6 years together. The woman that actually worked with us at the studio even before that, so it was a woman that named Kristen Scallion. She's a wonderful person, wonderful human, fantastic artist, and so she was an art director that went from one location to another, and I basically followed her wherever she was going to the next place, and she would recommend me to be sort of the next layer of oversight or design or production knowledge. And so I got my entry into Every by her telling me about an opportunity to become a producer, a game producer for Every, which is at the time multimedia games, which just means it was a slot machine maker. So I started out making uh, the true pull the arm slot machines 10 years ago at this
Wow.
company. That's what I did. And I did that for quite a while. But it was her and her working with me at the previous studio and knowing my background. And she introduced me to the company and I got to try to do it for a while. So that's I got it through a wonderful connection of someone I worked with in my studio that we ran named Sneaky Games. Sneaky Games is the name of
Mm.
the studio that me and a fellow of mine ran together. She was art director there.
Oh wow. And so like going from all these different studios and um from going from a producer to now a senior vice president, what are some necessary skills that you think that you've developed over your career that you've had to learn that have transferred from your different
That's a really good
paths?
question. Uh, when I joined when I joined multimedia and it became the idea of a large corporation of any kind, and large can be anything for me in my definition, the size we are, we're about 2,000 people as the company that I work for now. which is very large. All the way up, but I would have at the time considered 500 people very, very large because most of the teams that I'd worked on until then were like 20 people and the company was 30 people. And so in
Oh
those
man.
environments, um, the hats, as people kind of call it, or the roles that you play and what you do in a day is so widespread in small environments like that, especially one in an entrepreneurial, I would say startup mode for a while. So the biggest learning that I've had to do is how to become part of corporate culture and how to do the things that I know teams need to do successful and be innovative in a corporate environment. And corporations are not, I think, in my mind, it's not an objectively negative way to think of being a part and being creative. It facilitates a lot of that, but it is a significant difference between 10 years being in a privately owned and self-starting and entrepreneurial adventure with game makers and creatives, and then to doing that as a unit within a corporation. And so I've done an enormous amount of self-learning, how to become uh, a steward of the company as well as an innovator and a steward for my teams and as the people that want to kind of grow within it. And that's what I would say is a sort of the biggest set of learning and how
And
to navigate that.
and what was the most challenging transitionary piece of going from individual to corporate? Is it all of the I want to say rules, but I don't know if that's the right
Yeah,
word for
rules.
it.
Yeah, I'd say rules and the amount, I would say it comes down to time management overall and being able to manage your expectations of time and so on. And just like anything, the more you put into something, the more you get out. However, I think there are limitations to how much you can expect to move forward with and become and make your time valuable in a setting like within a 2,000 person company as opposed to a 30-person company. And seeing the repercussions of that time spent, I think can be much different. You pour 100 hours in because you kind of have to keep a business moving and forward and getting to the milestones that you want for everybody. And it's a communal feeling of that 100 hours being spent together. And in an environment where you have a layer of rules and administration and things that do protect the company and protect the people within it, you have to inherently kind of go slower, but not only slower, you have to do a method that is not arbitrated by the requirements of the product. It's more requirements of the company as a whole. And so I think the difference uh, renders in time and where you end up spending your time. And I've spent my time, a lot of it, evolving the way that our company treats my particular portion of the 2,000 people that we have as amazing employees of our company. Um, my portion is much smaller and does different things than a lot of the rest of it. So it's been having to evolve the way that they change their rules to adopt what we're making. So it's a bit
Mm.
different.
And what would you say your biggest responsibility is being a senior vice president and managing those 2,000 people? What would you say the biggest?
Well, we always have a responsibility to those who have supported us. So, of course, the investors that have poured their heart and minds and share, and we're a public company. So you have all of the kind of basic layer of economics that you finance that you have to do what your shareholders say. But I think my biggest responsibility as a person in the company is to uphold the culture that I know moves the business forward. And so my small team within a big company is about 140 people. We are connected in every way possible to the rest and the remainder of just over 800 and 1,850 people or so that are left in the company. Uh, I'd say my biggest role is making sure that we all feel connected to each other and making sure that my objectives are in sync with the other senior vice presidents of a 2,000 person company that have objectives as well. And so I'm on a lot of committees and a lot of um, uh, uh, we'll call them groups within our company that are not aimed at making money, but rather aimed at making sure that the cultural aspect and the efficiency that we can build by knowing what each other are doing and how we work with each other. I think that's my most significant role, is making sure that everybody has the information for uh,
Wow.
doing what they need to do, because nothing we do is um, independent of what the rest of the company is and vice versa. So it's important for me to play synthesis of the two,
Right,
keep
like
both moving
translating and
forward.
communicating.
Yep.
And what does an average day of as a senior vice president look like? Is it spent in meetings, or like just like the most average of days?
Yeah.
What are you
I
up
think
to?
lately I've been saying to my team and to my colleagues a lot that like my days are so eclectic. I think I've become a master of context switching. And, that's a great
Oh my gosh.
skill to hold. However, it's not the only thing that you can do, and there's only so much value placed in that skill. My average day has to do with about three parts, and I do a lot of describing around my day for other people so that they know what my unit does. We're an innovative unit within our 2,000 people. So I do a lot of educating. So I'd say about a quarter of my time is spent educating my team on where we're headed and what we're doing and what the company is doing, or vice versa, educating my company on what it is our products do and what the industry that we're in can benefit the company. I say I spend about a quarter of my time working with the individuals on my team, particularly leaders, become better leaders, and help myself become a better leader, but also let them uh, uh, discuss things that they need to accomplish in their daily life. So I do about a quarter of my time is spent speaking with my team leadership and their teams. And then another quarter of my time is spent behind my screen with no one else talking to me, talking, thinking, and typing and responding to not necessarily email, but written versions of what I just said I do with my leaders. A lot of our communication is asynchronous, and the way that we work worldwide, I cannot be in a communication and meeting setting to move something forward. So I'd say I have non-meeting meetings about a quarter of the time where I'm discussing things asynchronously. And then another quarter of my time is spent presenting and selling and being in front of customers and being basically a front man for this portion of our business. So I'm also a sales
Hmm.
representative, and I spend about a quarter of my time presenting to customers and
Hmm.
being the business aspect, so negotiating and doing things around money, around that aspect, finance and running the actual P&L uh, of our unit, which is a big skill set I had to learn to do what I'm doing now. I didn't know how to do that before.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
wow. It's like a jack of all trades. It's like
It
every
is. I agree.
hand in
Yeah.
every cookie jar. It's so impressive.
It's really
Um,
fun. It's never boring, I'll tell you that. It definitely, yeah, the days fly, the
Uh-huh.
hours fly, the minutes fly, and I
Mm,
never have enough time, which is a great sign for myself.
uh-huh. Yeah, that's just enjoyable. It sounds very interesting, just like um the teaching aspect of it. Like I guess I going into it, I didn't know that there was like teaching involved in being but I guess that makes
Neither,
sense of being a leader.
neither did I, really. It's like I partly have always been, everybody's, I think, either teaching or being taught pretty much at all times. I think that there's an aspect of you're always learning, and part of learning is teaching. And so even if you just kind of default to, you're always learning, you're always kind of teaching as well. My role in particular, I do a lot of education internally because we're an innovations group. What we do in particular is a very niche, small portion of the gambling industry as a whole. We build software and products for online gambling. And then in the United States, people know it as primarily as sports betting online with your app. But there's a lot of slot machines being played and games being played online, particularly outside of the United States, Europe in particular, and elsewhere, where there's not a lot of space for big grand casinos. My company doesn't know a lot about that, so I am the reason and the method by which my company becomes knowledgeable of that. So the education I do is to the company as a whole, and that's to other executive leaders, those that I respect and have been in the industry for 20 years longer than me, and I have to teach people that know more than me, in quotes. But also a lot of the people that join this particular set of industry or my industry at all, gambling in general, you don't just wake up one day and are like, today's the day I want to make a slot machine, but you have to find people who are willing to try and teach them a lot about an industry. Just like any other industry, there's a lot of history that informs where we've come to and what we're doing next. So I spend a lot of time teaching about
Mm.
the job itself, about the industry, and then teaching my company about what it is they can do to grow their bank account and stuff. So yeah, it's been a big, I did not know that's where a lot of my time would be spent when I started this.
Hmm.
It has been a lot of, yeah, it's been a lot of surprise time for me.
Yeah,
It's fun.
absolutely. And I saw that every and I believe you posted about on LinkedIn they did I don't like a big conference or like an
Yeah.
international meeting of the minds kind of for
Yes.
different
There's two
markets.
a year that we really engage in. There's one called G2E,
That,
which is
mhm.
Games Global, and that one is a long running one in the United States that happens in Vegas, where all of the suppliers, those people that make slot machines, and all of the casinos come together and look at what is primarily a United States industry mega conference with 40,000 people for 3 days, and it's a big swirling. Everybody throws their product. Hooray, we did it! And it's a great show and a big extravaganza. And it's basically a big moment in time where all of the game and content makers get a chance to show everything they have to every customer in the industry here. And then same is true. There's one called ICE, and that's been going on for 20 or 30 years, and it's a European focused conference, just as large, if not bigger than G2E. I think it's bigger. And we revolve around those two. And those two are very, very different in what we want to do with them. But yeah, our company puts a lot into those and puts huge, big booths with massive amounts of like LEDs and all kinds of experience. And it it's a basically the pinnacle of a gaming trade show that we go to, and basically it's a place for us to sell and deepen relationships and do that kind of thing. And
Mm.
it's always a party, and it's always a a big chance to see what like any gaming conference really
Mm.
see what the other people you know in the industry. And after 10 years in this industry, I do know quite a bit of people, and they're really brilliant. And it's a good chance to kind of see, hey, what are you doing now? And what are you making as game makers? You're always just actually most interested in what the other game makers are doing, because that's where their language is really
Hmm.
spent and deepened and so on.
Mm.
So that's where I spend my time as I look at the other suppliers more so than I do selling
Mm.
and
Hmm.
seeing what else is out there.
Right, that makes sense. Like looking at what others so you can implement it or yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Yep.
As like with all this experience and with all like now being have like being able to do all these skills as like a senior VP and doing the trade shows, is there any advice that you wish you could give to yourself when you just started out after college, knowing where you are now?
I think personally, if I had to speak just if I know the kind of person that I was really trying to start out in the games industry and trying out how to apply myself to is that don't get discouraged with the first set of opportunities that come your way in a particular area that you want to be in. Game making has such a huge breadth of experiences that you can do. If you're not in game making, which I was not at all, being willing to take any job in the game space will show you just how wide of it is. So I think if I were to give advice back to myself back then is be more willing to do some initial level jobs out the gate and not feel so resistant to it. Because once I did accept it, my first job in the gaming industry was a QA position, was a quality assurance position, testing the work of the person sitting right next to me. It was awkward, saying, "I'm sorry, your thing was broken. I don't know what to do with that information. Please fix it." But that was my job, and once I did that for a little while, I could start to see, oh, this is how I would build myself up to doing what I really wanted to do, which is design and produce games. And I thought I had the higher aspirations than what I was being afforded at the beginning, but now I know it was a perfect place for me to start. And so I
Mm,
think that's the advice that I'd give is being willing to start wherever it takes to get in.
mm,
Game
mm-hmm.
making in particular, it's a lot to learn. So starting anywhere is a
Right.
great place to start. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, yeah, just getting your foot in the door and just, yeah, like that makes
Yeah.
sense. Just being willing to try and fail and
Yeah.
like take risks.
Yeah.
What,
Build something for yourself even and
right.
see if you
And
see if
then
you like it.
learn, yeah, and then learn from those around you. That makes a lot of sense, especially, yeah, from what you said, like such a massive industry. There's so many like games are now, I feel like such a part of life for so many people, especially in the West and in
They
America.
are. They absolutely are. There's more
Hmm.
gamers on the planet now than and more money being made with games than
Hmm.
music and movies combined.
Oh my
And
gosh,
it's a
yeah.
strange thing to say that, but if you include all of what's happening in mobile, all of the gamification that is now in all the products that you do, it's a massive way of thinking. And I think
Hmm.
that everyone is sort of finding out that everyone has a way of engaging with it. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
you can't avoid it.
Um, and so what would you say like I feel like I'm backtracking a little bit, but what would you say like the pros and cons of your job are now?
I get to meet because of how international my unit is. I get to meet and see a lot of people that I know. I wouldn't get the opportunity to kind of talk with the subject matter I love most, which is games, and being able to talk with people around the world that see games the way that I do, and then get it to talk to them is probably the big one of the biggest benefits that I have in my role. Just getting to meet so many people, and that's just a great aspect of it. I'd say also um, when you're leading something that is new for everyone around you, you're afforded a lot of chances, and you're afforded a lot of opportunities to test and to prove and to do on. So I think a huge benefit of my job is to try new things and to innovate. And being afforded the opportunity to do so, being paid to innovate is a really wonderful feeling. And it comes with failure, but the failure is learning, and the success you get is so recognized that's a huge benefit. I'd say that the challenge is identical in where it starts. Doing something new anywhere will cause you and anyone that's doing it with you more effort, will require more effort than if it's not new. And being able to um, uh, do the job that I'm required to do, which is to make money for the company, while expanding the minds of those around me and educating, I think, to go back, has been the biggest challenge, is to learn how to educate. I'm not an educator, I'm a game maker, so learning how to educate, how to communicate in that way, and how to be patient with people's learning has been the biggest challenge by far for me. And personal challenge, I'm not a very patient person. That's why I want to make games. I want to do it instant now and see the result. And um, teaching isn't like that, I think, and overall learning is not like that. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge in what I do in particular, is the educational aspect and knowing who and how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how to reach people.
Yep, definitely. I
And
think
then,
that's it.
yeah. And then after all this, after all your time spent in the games industry and having made it to Everi and the gambling games industry, what would you say, either either career-wise or personal, what would you say your definition of success looks like?
I think a lot of people have sort of these. If you feel comfortable with the way you're spending your time and um, um, you're not hoping to be doing something else, I think you're successful inherently. And I think if you're spending your time and it's at at least in the majority something you feel has been worthwhile, and that you feel like what you bring to the table is being recognized. I think that that is what success has been defined as for me. I think generally speaking, overall, just like anyone else, you want to be happy doing what you're doing. I have compartmentalized some aspects of what I do, but you can't do that always. When you're leading a team, I think leading is a particular set of responsibility. And um, uh, yeah, I think I would say, I would I'd say success comes from feeling good about the time you spend. And if you're
Mm,
spending too much time, you'll know it. And if you spend too much time doing something, even if you get the marks, you get the money, and you get the KPIs that you need to do to move forward, you're not going to feel good about it.
mm,
It needs to feel in good ratio with the amount of time that you spend.
mm,
So success, I think, has to do with all of the things that show you that you're doing well, but did you do it in the right amount of time that makes your life feel good? So to
mm.
me,
Yeah, that's
that's a lot
interesting.
of it.
Like, how does it feel inside? Like, do you feel? Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, it's more like personal and rather than like projected.
hmm I think some people would say I would spend 300 hours doing this in a week and I would feel great about it. And so I don't want to tell anybody don't go overboard with spending too much time, or, reach towards a metric of time to and value yourself per hour and do those kinds of things. I think it's a true um, personal ratio
Mm,
of how much time did you spend, and then how do you get how good do you feel about that time. And work is work, but it can be more than that if you feel that way. And I think you'll know based on how much time you've spent and how much good you feel based on that. So
mm-hmm.
to me, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Those were those were
Welcome.
my
Thank you.
my
Thank
best
you so much.
questions. Yeah, no,
Oh, thank you
I
so
really
much. I appreciate it.
appreciate
It's thrilling to do
taking the
this,
time to
It's
spend
honoring.
an interview with me. It's such an honor.
Oh, my
Is it
pleasure.
okay if I ask you one kind of bonus question out of
Of
personal
course.
interest?
Sure.
I guess that's kind of all this is. It's just questions out of personal interest, honestly.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Uh,
but being like a teenager and like seeing like Twitch and YouTube and all those the streamers and stuff, I'm curious to know if like the streamers who play slots or who gamble to an audience, if that's affected I'm sure it has, but affected the gambling industry in any major ways.
I'd say yes, 100% yes. I think the way that you see it rendered in a tangible way is like I rely on casinos to show our game somewhere and to present it and to promote it just like any other product. And I think you think about if a celebrity endorses a cereal, more likely that kids are going to know about that cereal, and then at the grocery store, if they happen to be there and they get the opportunity to pick it, I think it's just about brand recognition.
Mm,
And I think that casinos recognize that around streamers and celebrity gamblers and so on, that they can use it to the advantage of their brand. And for me, which is not a casino, I just make content, I just make games, I just make slot machines. uh, if one of those celebrities, even if they're not the biggest in the world, if they spend any time in one of our games as opposed to not any time in our games, there is a significant difference in adoption.
oh wow.
And it's a very saturated industry, thousands and thousands and thousands of games, just like movies, just like anything. So I think that they have played a huge role in making sure that when someone's made a game, it gets visible. And I think right now it's very difficult to do that without endorsement, as it were. So yes, I think to answer your question, it has had an effect. It has shown that there's a wider audience that want to gamble. I mean, if that's a good or bad thing, it's up to other smarter minds than my own. But certainly, even past and beyond that, the
Mm,
profitability of our industry does get enhanced and degraded by how much public adoption there is.
mm-hmm.
I think that uh, obviously on a level of legality and regulatory framework. My industry is seeped in it, and so the more and broader we can make the public feel comfortable with those regulations and those protections we have for the players, and have celebrities do that on Twitch or elsewhere, it only adds to the case that we can do this safely. And so I
Mm,
think there is a visceral benefit overall to the perception of my industry publicly, I'll say, and
mm,
has been a lot different. We have a couple streamers that are quite famous in the gambling industry, and they have done a good job of evangelizing, I think, the safeness of their choice of game
mm,
and warning those that
mm,
have issues not to come. And so they're a good, I think, a good voice that
for,
helps us
mm,
do the messaging to the player, which is, one step away for us as a game maker. It's the casinos. So in those
right.
way, I think absolutely affects us, and that I do think it has a benefit for us
Hmm.
too.
Right, like being responsible with it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Yep, you can be a normal and healthy person as long as you have the boundaries and the legal state to
Mm,
protect both the public as well as the individual. So
hmm.
yeah, yeah. So yes, the good question and
Thank you.
very prominent right
Yeah,
now. Yeah.
absolutely. Um, and then, sorry, just one more. Can't help
Yeah.
myself. How do you get feedback for your games? I was curious because I know that, like, I guess I play video games in my free time, and I feel like a lot of the feedback from fans comes from like Reddit or like
Yeah.
reviewers, um, or like comments on the posts on YouTube when it comes like from the trailers and stuff. And I was wondering what the feedback looks like when it comes to gambling games.
Um, From a player's perspective, we do get a lot of feedback because we get to see what they say and how they say it to our customers. Those customers are casinos, and so the
Mm,
big name casinos basically translate, or they pass on to us what the players say overall. However, I will say those places that you just mentioned are where we do look at sort of
mm,
a big litmus test outside of our data analysis, which is kind of the big end all answer to your question, is the data that we incorporate and look at and evaluate. Um, but even so, places like Reddit, places like forums, and places like message boards on particular casinos and so on, they know that we as game makers go to those places, and so you'll see even in those places for gamblers, they'll be with their phone in front of a slot machine being like, okay, listen, Every, I like I like this about this, but I like the machine over there better. And there are people that actually do that, so it is rarer, I think, just because people's anonymity is so important in gambling, I
mm,
think, for a lot of people. However, I'm in an online space, so it's easier to reach us. And
mm.
so we do go to those same places. It's rarer for it to go direct, though. Otherwise, we get it from casinos.
Right, right.
The
Okay, well,
customers themselves. Yeah.
thank you again so
Oh, my
much for
pleasure.
spending
It's
this
been so
time.
thrilling. I
And I just want to
appreciate
make
it.
sure that